The RCGP is going through its process of elections for both national representative and presidential candidates. And in this really spur of the moment episode, we're going to be joined by some of those candidates for those particular roles and reviewing the process of elections to these particular representative roles, having a look at some of the other candidates that unfortunately aren't able to join us because, let's be honest, last minute, it's a Saturday and all that kind of stuff, as we try and look at who wants to be a council member on the RCGP. Let's tech enhance your primary care and learning. Hello, EGP learners. Welcome to this episode where we're having something a little bit different. We're going to be reviewing the election process and kind of doing an online husting for the RCGP representative roles. What's your thoughts on this, Andy?
Yeah, really happy and excited to have all the candidates here. Obviously, some can't join us. It's a Saturday morning. You know, we're all in favour of work-life balance, but we've got a good selection of candidates. It'll be the most people we've ever had on screen at once. So I'm hoping that the technology holds up. But yeah, really excited to get going, really. And I guess it would be interesting for some people just to know a little bit about, what's happening, what the elections are, what the roles that are being elected to, and how people can vote as well, which hopefully we can show online.
Yeah, which we will be doing. So as Andy mentioned, please be slightly forgiving with this. It's the first time we've done anything this, shall we say, adventurous on the channel as well. And some of you may have realized we're doing this on a Saturday morning. Again, this is just because it's the main opportunity that we've had in order to do so. And so I guess just to comment on a couple of things, there is the election process itself to the RCGP council. And in this particular cycle, there are two roles going out for election. So the first is the presidential role. And this is the kind of position that takes on the, in some places it's considered as a provost, shall we say. It's more of a ceremonial placement compared to the chair, which is the actual functioning of the college. Obviously, our current chair is Camilla Hawthorne. And it is normally a term for 2 years currently. It used to be 3 years, got shortened a few years back and stuff. And we have 7 candidates for that. I'm just trying to find my screen share because it's gone a little bit wappy, which is not so fun at this point. And effectively, there are 7 candidates going for this particular role. Of those candidates, 4 are female, 4 are female, 3 are male. And we're going to show you what it looks like in a second. Andy, do you mind just taking over for a second because my computer's going a bit fun?
Yeah, that's fine. I've also got the screen queued up as well. So obviously people are joining. We moved our normal Saturday morning slot to Thursday, didn't we? So we carried some of the audience over there, but I'm sure lots of people will be re-watching this afterwards as well. But only the live people get a chance to pose their questions. So I can probably do the screen share, Gandhi.
No, I found it. It's just getting into the actual things, unless you've...
That's my screen.
That's your screen. Yeah. Okay, fine. Yeah, we'll go for it from there. So if we go back to the presidential candidates, that's all right, Andy?
Yeah.
Apologies all. I had this loaded and it timed out, so now I have to go back into it, which is why.
So we'll get an email, don't we? And if you click through the email, it takes you to this special voting website run by a independent voting company, and you can navigate around and have a look at the candidates and cast your vote. Back to you, Gandhi. What do you want me to show?
Yeah, so if we go for the RCGP president's role, first of all, so as we mentioned, we've got 7 candidates there. An interesting mix of candidates. 2 of them are former officers of the RCGP. Almost all of these roles have held either council roles within the college or various other roles and stuff. And I guess just to have a quick review. So content-wise, if you want to see that, you obviously click on the name and you get the statements and things like this. So we're currently looking at Maureen Baker's profile there. Every single one of these candidates does have a video. The videos are approximately 2 minutes long, so a really good opportunity to see what each candidate is talking about. I did a little bit of digging as well. 2 of the candidates have directed to public profiles such as social media and that kind of stuff out of the presidential candidates, and there's obviously information there. You can also check out the declarations of interest. This is the same for both presidential and for national representative candidates. Rather than clicking on those, because that obviously shows personal information, and I'd rather not show that on the channel. But the things that covers is remunerated office or employment. So that's basically main roles that you may have. Remunerated ad hoc work, so locum work or other kind of roles and that kind of stuff. Remunerated directorships. I know the first time I read that, I saw it as dictatorships, but hey, whatever. Registrable shareholdings, patient or loyalty interests that people may have, land and property commercial interests, gift, benefits and hospitality, member of formal groups and organizations, and unenumerated directorships and trustee positions as well. So there's what the declarations encompass. So lots of information that's there and supplied. So that's the presidential candidates. If we go to the national representatives, so there are 13 candidates going for the national representatives role. I guess the key difference with this one, there are 6 available positions on each cycle. There's 18 in total, but they do each of those over for a period of 3 years. So that's why it's 6 per rotation. And we have, if I remember rightly, 8 male candidates and 5 female candidates going for this particular role. A larger element of diversity in terms of the backgrounds of the candidates as well. When it comes to the information that they've provided, so 7 of these candidates have videos, 2 directly to public profiles like social media and stuff. Interestingly, only 1 candidate has both. I wonder if you can figure out who that might be. But yeah, so lots of information and stuff. As I mentioned, we're not going to go through examining those in detail because that's your opportunity to do so and decide who you feel you want to vote for. But I would recommend spending a little bit of time looking at that information because it is, important information each candidate's provided about themselves. Videos really helpful. I would recommend watching those because that can give you a bit more of a flavour about the candidates as well. But at this point, what we're going to do is bring on the actual candidates themselves. So we do have 7 candidates, I believe, joining us today. And let's just bring them on, Andy, if that's all right. I'm just going to do the screen share in full so it makes it look a little bit slicker as we do it. And there we go. Not as slick as we'd like, but thank you everybody for joining us. So welcome to the EGP Learning. Just to make this a bit easier, we're going to mute everybody if that's all right, because otherwise we're going to get loads of feedback. And we'll bring you on as we do each person individually. So I'm going to go in order of my screen. So after Andy, I've got John. John, do you just want to say a quick hi to everybody and let everybody know what role you're going for and why?
Yeah. Okay. Hi. So I'm John Stevens. I've put all my details are all on the website, but basically I've been a GP for 30 years. I recently had a stroke about 12 months ago and had to take time out of practice, but I've actually returned to work, made full recovery, and I'm sort of basically now back working at my practice and keen to I've got more time. So I'm only working part-time now, so I've actually got time to get involved with college council and hopefully contribute, which I've never really had the time or opportunity to do that before. And I do feel I have that now, and I'm keen to try and contribute on council to the way forward, how the college takes things forward from here. Yes.
Thank you, John. So probably should have mentioned, we have told the candidates we're giving them a very short time frame to answer their questions as well. So you may wonder why they're being deliberately a little bit brief, and that's because we want to
45 seconds.
Yeah, 45 seconds, which Andy, if you see him start waving around or mentioning anything, that's why that's happening and stuff. So I'm going to pass over next, if we can, to Chand. And Chand, you are now unmuted.
Hello, sorry, I can't even see the screen. Something's happened. So can you see and hear me?
You can.
All right, okay. All right, so I'm Chand Nagwal. I'm a GP. I've been a GP for 34 years in the very same practice that I joined amidst huge and fierce competition. There were 80 applicants for the one partnership position, 180 applicants for 2 VTS scheme places. So I come from a background of fighting to be a GP, and I know what it was like in the days when people wanted to be a GP and found it really rewarding. I spent 9 years, many of you may know, at BMA House largely, chairing the BMA GPs committee for 4 years, and for the last 5 years, chairing BMA UK Council. So I do think that I bring a unique perspective, both of the profession, representing it, but also the wider system in which general practice operates. I returned to my practice doing frontline general practice about a year ago, and I therefore experiencing it in some ways with renewed vigor, with fresh eyes. And I am determined that the college should resurrect the soul and essence of general practice.
10 seconds.
And I believe there are many ways in which that can happen. And that's why I want to be a part of that change and that renaissance.
Thank you, Chand. Just in time frame as well. So thank you very much for that. Right, next we're going to pass over to Heather. Let me just find your unmute button. And there you go. You're up and live.
Thank you. So I'm standing to be a nationally elected council member. I have some knowledge and experience within the college, so I know how the processes work and how to get things done. But crucially, I'm not afraid to challenge orthodoxies and make myself unpopular at times. The RCGP strategic plan identified workload and workforce as the college's #1 priority for the next 3 years. And I want to hold council to account and make sure that workload implications are considered when motions and policies come to council. In terms of my other beliefs, I believe that GPs are best placed to see undifferentiated patients. Other members of the MDT need to have different roles which complement their skills and training. I believe in challenging overdiagnosis and promoting evidence-based care, which again helps with workload because unevidence-based things like dementia screening and AF screening add to GP workload to little benefit in my view. And I believe that RCGP is the professional home of all GPs, including those like me who do some work in the private sector, because I work part-time within the NHS and secure services.
10 seconds.
Part-time as a private GP. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Again, just in time, which is awesome. Right, next I've got John. And John, you are now unmuted and people can hear you.
Sorry, that's from me.
Jonathan.
Right, Jonathan. Yeah,
Jonathan, sorry. Yeah.
So I'm applying for president. So hi, everybody. So key things for me are really workload and workforce. And I was just reflecting on my last patient last night. It was actually as a consequence of secondary care problems that I ended up working till 7 o'clock and writing up the notes this morning. So, you know, we've got huge problems. Now, the role of the president is ceremonial, but behind the scenes actually have influence, particularly to the other officers. So workload, I think the other things to me are the additional roles. I'm for the use of the additional roles, but they're not to replace the doctors. They should be in addition to the doctors. And I think the way that this is being rolled out is wrong. I'm also very supportive. We've got a wide range of international graduates. Our practice recently had 3 international graduates as our GP registrars. Actually, we need to recognise the different experiences and skills that they bring, and also support them as they move into the NHS. Actually, they were brilliant doctors, really good. Patients love them. And then sustainability, as I said in my statement, very keen on that, and I did 2 home visits by bicycle yesterday, so that's my halo polish for yesterday. No combustion engines.
Thank you, Jonathan. Keen to hear people looking after our environment as ever, as best as we can. Thank you. Next, we're going to pass over to Maureen Baker. You are now unmuted and people can hear you.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for watching this. I'm Maureen Baker. I'm standing for the role of president. Now, as we've heard from Jonathan previously, that is a ceremonial role. There are so many problems going on in general practice at the moment. You all know, you don't need me to tell you. But I really believe it's the role of the chair and council to be tackling these massive issues for general practice. This leaves, I think, a bit of scope for the president to focus on individual GPs. I've probably been to more fellowship ceremonies than anybody else in the college with all my years. And I'm always amazed when people come up for their award to hear the amazing things that we do. And I don't think there is enough emphasis on the amazing, wonderful things that individual GPs can do. So I really want to highlight that and celebrate the role of GPs.
Thank you, Maureen. Appreciate that. People may have noticed whilst Maureen was talking, we just added someone else into the chat. So we'll come to Susie in a second. But just before we get to her, so she's got some chance to settle in, can I pass over to Selva? Selva, you're live and people can hear you.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me. Excellent candidates, and it really gives me kind of a lot of hope. So why am I standing? So I'm what you would call a mid-career GP. Hopefully, I've still got another 20 years left, and I've done various roles: locum GP, salary GP, and I'm now a partner in a partnership that's helped pioneer some health inequalities initiatives for the whole of the country. But what I'm really worried about is GP retention. Pay, workload, working conditions is driving GPs out. We've lost about 2,000 GPs since 2015. And I think the college has a really crucial role in helping and working very closely with other stakeholders like the BMA in improving GP retention and recruitment. And we also have, people mentioned about the R's roles. So what we really need to explore is what is the current feature role of general practice? What does it mean to be a GP? there are people who are doing complementary roles within general practice, but also people who the government wants to be replacing GPs. So we need to be defining, the college needs to be defining what is the current and future role of the GP.
10 seconds.
And IMG GP trainees who are now 50% of the ST1s, and I am a TPD for them and having a great advocate, and hopefully we'll be able to take initiatives forward for them. Membership retention is also one of the massive issues. Every GP I've canvassed has said
minus 5 seconds.
Thank you.
Thank you, Salva. So appreciate it. The time limits are tricky. So I'm just now going to pass over to Susie. Just a reminder, Susie, you've got 45 seconds to introduce yourself.
Well, I've been giving people a minute actually, but I am being quite strict at that minute point.
Okay. Susie, you're live. People can hear you. Introduce yourself.
Hello, everybody. It's very daunting standing in this company of absolutely fantastic candidates and making yourself vulnerable. But I think everybody here is here because they want to serve, because they want to make a positive difference to the college. And the college is your professional home, whether you see the benefits of your subscription payment or not. And the presidential role, as Gandhi said, is a ceremonial role where you go out and you meet as many members as you can, and you promote general practice as widely as you can, and you explain to the medical students and the doctors in training why general practice is absolutely the best job in medicine, and you promote general practice to the widest and greatest and most senior people in the land as well. So you are an ambassador and a representative. And the reason I want to do it is because I'm at the right stage of my life with grown-up children, and I can travel the country, and I love meeting people, and I love inspiring people, and in turn being inspired by them.
10 seconds.
As Selva said, at the moment, general practice is not sustainable. We need to make it sustainable, and that means engaging everybody.
Thank you, Susie. And thank you to all the candidates for your candor and the opportunity to speak as well. So we have had some pre-submitted questions, and we're going to go to those now. We are absolutely going to take questions from the comments in chat shortly as well. And I think the first one is kind of one that we've already had come through on the chat itself. So Robert, where's it gone? Robert Lawrenson has. Oh no, it's moved down. It's going too quick. Where have we gone? There we go. Are you doing Andy? Okay, you do Andy. The first one, if that's all right.
That's fine. So, so question from Robert Lawrenson. What are your views on medical associate professionals in primary care? So the role that they have, which I think is similar to the pre-submitted question, which was as a future rep on to council or president. What are your views on their perception and impact of additional roles in primary care? Do you feel there needs to be change in function and regulation, and if so, how to do so? And I am reminded we'd said 45 seconds to respond to these, so I think just your opinion really on the roles of medical associate professionals and anything else you can squeeze in.
And since Susie's not had the opportunity to hear that pre-submitted question, we'll come to her last. I'm going to go same order on this one. So if we can go first of all to John, please.
You're muted, John. I'm going to unmute you. No, you're still muted. It doesn't appear I can unmute you, John.
I've got it. I've unmuted. Zach, can you hear me?
There we go.
You now.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think there may be a role, but I think we have to be very careful. I mean, I think, GMC's proposal of moving SAS doctors into primary care without any primary care training was just ludicrous, and I think we have to resist that sort of thing very strongly. I think there may be a role for physician associates, etc., but they do have their own college. They have a faculty as part of the Royal College of Physicians, and I'm not sure the RCGP should be embracing them in the same way, but I do believe they can have a role in the primary healthcare team, yes, but not to replace what GPs do, which I think is what the government would like, because I'm sure they're a cheaper resource than we are.
10 seconds.
I think we're done there, actually. Thank you very much, John. So next, can we pass over to Chand? Andy, I'll let you do the muting and unmuting.
Okay. And you're good to go, Chand.
Right. Okay. So for me, I think the key word is additional. And these roles need to be additional to GPs themselves and not a substitute. That's my worry politically. For me, when I returned to substantial general practice a year ago in my practice, that was the biggest change I noticed, is the number of pharmacists we had, a couple of PAs, ANPs, and therefore it felt very different. And what I believe is that regulation is absolutely imperative. That's not the case for our PAs, for example. The second is they do need training, and we are taking out considerable time as GPs in debriefing and providing additional training sessions. And that actually, I don't believe many practices have costed, because that actually sometimes will be more expensive than employing a GP themselves. I think safety is absolutely imperative. We've heard some sadly anecdotal examples where patients have come to harm by a practitioner not having the competence or experience and skills to manage a condition or diagnose it properly. And I do worry about that immensely. And I think that all practices need to be very careful about the remit that any additional role a practitioner has. So in summary, I do think that this must never be seen as a substitute. We need more GPs, and we also need additional support. And the two roles need to be complementing each other with proper safeguards.
Thank you, Chand.
Thank you, Chand.
Detailed answer there. So if we can now pass over to Heather. So similar question about the roles of PAs and other medical associate roles in general practice.
And people can now look out for the card for 10 seconds. I've decided that my voice is too intrusive, but you'll have to look out for the card on the screen. But you're unmuted, Heather, and good to go.
Thank you. So I think that GPs are best at managing undifferentiated illness. I think the rigour of medical school and GP training prepares GPs well for that. And I think we need to be careful that physicians associates and other similar roles should be used in roles that actually suit their skills and training, rather than as a substitute for GPs. I think for the sake of both patient safety, but also for the sake of professionals, we don't want to be putting people, in a situation where they're working beyond their competence. That's stressful and difficult. You've got to remember as well that physicians associates, because they require supervision, that in itself is quite onerous for GPs. So my personal view is that, PAs and those sorts of roles, in many ways, I think are very better suited to the hospital environment, procedures, cannulas, TTOs, certain procedures and so forth, in a way that doesn't take training opportunities away from doctors. I think in terms of regulation, I know the GMC are already looking into that. I believe it's going to be the second half of 2024, last time I looked. So I think regulation is vital to keep people safe. So I look forward to seeing how that develops.
Thank you very much, Heather. So next we're going to go to Jonathan Leach. You are waiting for it to happen.
You're good to go. So we were both on the button at the same time, John. I think you're
right. I should be unmuted. Right. I'm always reminded of the Red Adair phrase: if you think it's expensive to hire a professional to do a job, wait until you hire an amateur. And whilst I'm for the use of, the physicians associates, I think they can be really helpful. We need to be really clear on what they do, but also the interrelationship with us as GPs. We have huge amount of experience and expertise across many years. And actually finding a role for them, I think, is helpful. But as I said in my introductory remarks, they're not instead of, so they're in addition to the doctors, they're not instead of the doctors. And I think that's my concern. Heather is absolutely spot on. They need regulation, they need support, and that needs to be thought through, particularly in terms of how they're supported, but also how they're financed. And actually the key for me is actually not more physicians associates, it's more GPs. Actually, we're the ones who actually do the job. And actually we're the one, like many of my patients yesterday, just the huge complexity of the things that people bring, 3-4 things. And actually, the GP is the only person who realistically can deal with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. So I can see we're getting loads of comments and questions coming through. We will come to those shortly, so don't worry. But now at this point, I'd like to pass over to Maureen to talk about her views on medical associate practitioners within general practice.
Thanks. Well, in many respects, I think that in general practice, we need all the qualified, relevant help we can get. If I have the choice of a GP or bringing in a pharmacist or a physician associate, give me the GP anytime. But actually, where I've lived and worked for many years in Lincoln, we can't get GPs. We've struggled and struggled. Now, one of the things I'm proudest of in my period as chair of the college was the initiative to bring pharmacists into general practice. I think that's worked really well. I always said that after a bit, if I practice as a pharmacist, try taking them away and see how they like that. I do think it's different for physician associates. The role isn't as carved out as it is, for instance, for pharmacists. But I think there could be a role. I think it's for GPs and the practices to decide what that role should be. And definitely they should be regulated. I lost a campaign in the early 2000s to say that the GMC should regulate PAs. And here we are. If they'd listened to me 20 years ago, I think it would have been in a lot better place now.
Thank you, Maureen. So we're now going to pass over to Selva. So same question again, your views on medical associate. I keep getting mixed up, practitioners, whatever it is. But yep, Selva, your view.
Thank you. So being a GP is probably the hardest job in medicine. I'm going to challenge anyone to prove me otherwise. We deal with undifferentiated presentations, manage risk, manage uncertainty. We don't really have an exclusion criteria for patients. Anyone can come and see us. And, you know, I've always called for longer GP training because it takes about another 5 to 10 years after qualification to become unconsciously competent with a lot of the things we deal with. So expecting someone else to do the job that we do is not right. I'm completely supportive of complementary roles like physios, pharmacists, mental health practitioners, but we need to really question and heavily why PAs who are not regulated, who can't prescribe, are being pushed. And so I would like our college, if elected, to actually review our position as to where we stand with PAs. And I can understand why some GPs embrace them. We've got a massive recruitment challenge, but we really need to be careful to push this corporate industrial size primary care, which kind of undermines the principles of continuity of care, a sense of being a GP, and it's not safer, it's not better, it's not cost effective. But I think we're distracting ourselves here. What we need to be calling is medical workforce plans to invest in, prioritize GP training. We need more
verbal
GPs,
countdown in a second.
clinicians. So, sorry, I didn't notice. But I think we need to be focusing on GPs.
Thanks, Selva.
Thank you, Selva. And finally, we're going to pass over to Susie. So similar question, Susie, your views on medical associate practitioner. I'm getting confused now. Go for it, Susie. You're open.
All the allied health professionals are welcome. I'm with Maureen. We need as many hands on the deck in primary care as we can get. But we need people doing jobs that they are comfortable to do, they're safe to do, and with appropriate supervision. The evidence shows that continuity of care is a huge factor in reducing premature mortality and significant morbidity. And if you could prescribe continuity of care as a drug, it will be incredibly effective compared to some of the others, which we might get into issues of over-prescribing things. So I feel really strongly that the role of the RCGP is to focus on continuity of care through the GP as the leader of the primary care team, and continuity of care within the team so that communication is really good about the individual patient. I had to take some time out of general practice when my elderly parents were pretty ill, and I'm back in now. And like other people, I have found that this team has expanded enormously, and the supervision time required of GPs has expanded enormously. So what I think is we need to embrace this opportunity, but do it carefully and with a focus on continuity.
Thank you, Susie. So lots of really cool responses from all of our candidates here. And we've had loads of comments coming through as well. So really appreciate that if everybody's jumping in. I guess comments from EGP Learning regular, Miss Melody. So GPs are irreplaceable and teamwork makes the dream work as well coming through. So I guess at this point, we're going to go to our second pre-submitted question. Mm-hmm. We are having loads of questions coming through, so I don't know how many of these we're actually going to get a chance to go through, but we will try our best. So I'm going to go in reverse order this time round, and I'm actually going to bring it on. Andy, can you bring it on? Because I know you've written it in the chat, haven't you, somewhere?
I did. So the pre-submitted question was about, so I think a faculty recently, so not Central College, but a faculty recently advertised a training session about GPs developing side hustles. So things like selling things on Amazon and things like that. I think it looked like they might cover. So pre-submitted question, the RCGP recently advertised about side hustles. Is that appropriate use of resources?
So if we can go reverse order this time round. So Susie, you're first up, if that's okay.
This is a really, really interesting question, isn't it? We want people to feel that their membership fees are used appropriately, and advertising about doing something that is not general practice doesn't immediately spring to mind as being an appropriate use of my membership fee. On the other hand, we know that in real terms, income for doctors has gone down dramatically, that there is a cost of living crisis, and that people might be looking for other ways to supplement their income because they have commitments that they have to meet. So it's always a delicate balance between making sure that what you are doing is of value to the membership and that it's fair to doctors and actually meets real people's real needs.
Thank you, Susie. So next up, we're going to go to Selva. Selva, you're up. Your views on the appropriate use of resources.
Thank you. So this is about that tweet from RCGP North. I actually responded to that Twitter yesterday. This is what I said. This is not right, RCGP North. All for exploring GP career choices within and outside of NHS. And I've done many life after BTS talks, which explores careers within the NHS, private sector, even abroad. And I think it's important to give all the opportunities and all the kind of options that are available for our trainees. But fulfillment by Amazon e-commerce model promoted by a professional body, the Royal College, isn't the way to do it. So I think it was a very unfortunate tweet, which has since been deleted. And we should really need to be looking at. So I'm inside of a survey that was done in 22 about why members leave the college, and not representing their viewpoints is one of the major concerns raised, and I would like to do something about that if I get elected.
Thank you, Selva. So, Maureen, same question again to yourself. The RCGP recently advertised about side hustles. Is that an appropriate use of resources?
So for me, it's actually less about the resources. It's more about what is the college there for. The college is a charity. We have a charitable objective. That charitable objective is to promote the highest standards of care in general practice. And actually, everything the college does can be traced back to that charitable objective. Now, it's quite difficult to see how promoting side hustles does meet that charitable objective. I mean, certainly promoting the welfare of GPs absolutely does. You need, GPs to be happy, content, well-functioning people in order to be well-functioning GPs. But frankly, if it was important to me to generate more income from selling stuff on eBay, for instance, or Amazon, I think I could find other sources that tell me how to do that better than the RCGP. So no is my answer.
Thank you, Maureen. So now we're going to pass over to Jonathan. So same question again. The RCGP recently advertised about side hustles. Is that an appropriate use of resources?
Yeah, thanks. I actually said in my statement, I really recognise the financial challenges, particularly of younger doctors. They're the ones who've got the student debt, high mortgages, things like this. So actually, I absolutely recognise that. But actually, I think, the way that the college should be doing is recognising how other roles within the NHS and within general practice, people can have a portfolio career, they can train and be go and have specific roles. So actually, I think that where we should be going is advertising some of these other roles, which actually allow people to stay in general practice because they have that portfolio of work. And I think that's the way to do it, rather than actually recommending that people start with an eBay shop or something like that. So my view is very similar to Maureen's, but I do recognise the financial challenge, particularly on younger doctors, as they go through their professional career. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. So now we're going to pass over to Heather. So the RCGP recently advertised about side hustles. Is that an appropriate use of resources?
Thank you.
Go for it.
So I think it's the role of the college to represent all GPs and all GP roles, NHS, private, remote roles, out of hours. And so I think, like Jonathan, my view would be, rather than promoting side hustles, we should be supporting members to find ways of having a sustainable career as a GP. I have an amazing career unconstrained by the GMS contract. I work as an NHS GP in secure services, so I'm employed by a mental health trust, and I also do some work as a private GP. And I've got a great work-life balance. I'm very happy, and you know, I think we need to ensure that GPs are aware of those sorts of options. I don't really think that drop shipping on Amazon is something the college should be promoting. And I agree with Maureen's comment that I don't think it meets the charitable objectives of RCGP. I think we need to be careful not to get involved in a pile-on in terms of that tweet. I know some of the people involved in RCGP North. I suspect they'll do a lot of reflection on this. So I suppose we just need to be a bit kind and not pile on.
Thank you, Heather. So next we're going to go to Chan. Same question again. The RCGP recently advertised about side hustles. Is that an appropriate use of resources?
Thank you. Look, I didn't see the tweet, so I'm a little out of the loop here, so apologies. But I think that the college should be focusing on its core function, which is about GPs and the ability for anyone who becomes a GP to be able to go into the profession and be properly remunerated, properly rewarded, so that they don't need to do other jobs or other roles to actually supplement their income. In fact, the more you focus on that, the more you almost endorse or accept a job that isn't rewarding enough or isn't remunerated enough. So it's certainly not, in my view, the role of the college. But as I said, I've not seen the tweet. I think that the real crucial point is that we need to make sure that anyone who is a GP is both feeling that they can do the job they were trained to do, and that means feeling valued, feeling you've got the time to care, listen, examine, and you really feel that being a GP is what you're doing and you're being paid and you're being rewarded fairly to do so. You shouldn't have to be distracted by other things unless you choose to do so, not the role of the college.
Thank you, Chand. And finally, we're going to go to John to answer the same question. So just again for, where has it gone? There we go. It's being a little bit slow, apologies. So the RCGP recently advertised a comment about side hustles. Is that an appropriate use of resources? John?
Short answer, no, but mainly because I feel it gives the wrong perception of what the college is doing. And I think it just gives a poor impression of the RCGP in general. And, you know, I think we need to be trying to attract as many people as possible. And I think that sort of thing does put them off a bit. But on the more broader point about, you know, income and all that, like Heather, I also combined doing an NHS GP job and also did some private work, had a small private clinic in my own time. Not actually because of the money, but purely because you were able to do the job properly and give time to the patients. And I'd rather the college needs to be promoting that and making sure we have appropriate working conditions within the NHS. Then there'd be no need to do private practice, as other people have said.
Thank you, John. Awesome, everybody. Thank you for those responses. So as I mentioned, we've had loads of questions start coming through. Now, I'm going to try my best to try and combine some of these because there are elements that match up. So apologies, you're not going to be able to read everything, but I will show them what they are, and then I'll formulate a slightly different question from them just to try and encompass a few things. So we've had one from Robert Lawrensman. What do you think the RCGP should do in the event that it disagrees with government policy, feels it can no longer influence the government policy for the benefit of GP and patients? And then we've had another question. Where's it gone? Here we are. From Manu Knight. What are your thoughts on the strike and full pay restoration movement? So to combine those, I'm going to ask the question, what are your views in terms of how the college engages with government and when it doesn't agree, such as the concept of pay? We're going to go from a different perspective. So I'm going to start off this time with Jonathan Leach, if that's okay.
Yeah, I think the college needs to be clear, actually. So, you know, I was on council when the junior doctor strikes were on, and I spoke, this was the last time, I was very pro it then. And actually, I think we need to make our views clear. Now, the downside of that can be that you lose traction in terms of influence within government, but we're a membership organisation, and I think we need to be clear in terms of our views. And where I am with the current strikes is that it is very clear that the you know, pay has not kept up. There's no question about that. And actually, whilst the 35% as a headline is difficult, there needs to be a mechanism where actually that is addressed. If nothing else, everybody's going to bugger off to Australia and everywhere else. So, you know, we're in an international market and that's just not being addressed. So I think the college does need to be clearer, but I do recognise that there are sometimes interfaces with the BMA on this. You know, the BMA does pay and rations, to use that term, but I think the college should be supportive.
Thank you, Jonathan. So I'm going to ask the same question to Maureen, and just to summarise that question again, what do you think should happen when the college disagrees with government policies, for example? And an example of that may obviously be things like pay, as we're currently seeing with the strikes. Maureen.
So the college disagrees with government policy all the time. Every government, as long as I've been associated with the college, and it's the college's role to put the view of the profession from the professional perspective, not the pay and rations perspective. It's not always visible when the college is majorly disagreeing with the government of the day, but I can assure you that a lot of work, a lot of thought goes into doing that. And what we want is the result. We want the government to come round to the colleges, the profession's way of thinking. We don't necessarily want a full head-on battle. So maybe we do sometimes, not always. In terms of the pay issue, when I was chair, I campaigned for supporting the service of general practice with the funds it needs to do the jobs. That's not actually the same as GP pay. But I go back to saying I really think that's the role for the professional representatives that we've got in the BMA. The college can, however, legitimately campaign for funding for the service of general practice. I thought so 10 years ago. I think so now.
Thank you, Maureen. So same question to Selva. What do you feel should happen when the RCGP disagrees with the government? And an example of that would obviously be the recent strikes relating to pay.
So I think so. This question was actually asked to me in a separate forum, and I gave my answer. So it's really important. So there are two important organisations that represent GPs here. So that's the RCGP as a professional home, and you've got the BMA, which is the trade union. What I would actually really like is much more coordinated working between the two of them. I sit on the BMA council, and I don't see a lot of interaction between the two great organisations. What we need to be doing is working together about looking at where our interests lie and how we respond to government policies, because at times there have been unfortunate announcements about GPs not striking, because that's not true. That's actually the task for the GPC to deal with, which Chan led ably for a number of years. So I think it's really important we challenge the government when we feel that it's not in the interest of the profession. But we also work with all the other stakeholders so that we are actually giving a consistent message. I think that's how we progress in terms of our viewpoints and challenging what the government has to say.
Thank you, Selva. Appreciate the answers. Now, just to mention, I'm aware that Selva unfortunately will need to leave at this point. So just to mention that to everybody else. So that's what he has mentioned, that he had to leave at this time. We're going to continue though. So thank you, Selva, for your time. And we will hopefully see how the results go for you after that point. I am, however, going to pass on to our next candidate. So Susie, same question to you. So the concept of what happens when the college disagrees with, for example, government policy and stuff. And an example of that would be obviously the recent strike issues with pay. Susie, you're up.
I think we have fallen into a tragedy. I think if you put patients first, then what we've actually done is we've started to lay ourselves open to the charge of not caring. And if you break the bond between doctor and patient by striking, then I think you have a really big trust issue to recover afterwards. At the same time, as Jonathan have said, the situation is untenable. You cannot have a 35% real decrease in pay and expect people to stay in the profession. And if there are no doctors in the UK, and in particular, if there are no doctors in general practice, the NHS will fall over very fast. The RCGP is not a trade union, but it has a lot of soft power, And as Maureen says, as a council member, I've seen us exerting that again and again and again and challenging government all the time.
Thank you, Susie. So I'm going to go to John next with the same question. So what do you feel should happen when the college disagrees with policies from the when the college disagrees with policies from the government? And an example of that would obviously be the recent strike issues and pay.
Yeah. So as others said, I think it's a fine line between the role of the BMA and the role of the medical royal colleges. And in the past, I'd have said, leave it to the BMA. But I think that it's such an exceptional situation at the moment in the NHS generally. I think the colleges have to take a role. And I think we shouldn't be doing it alone as the RCGP, though. I think we should be working together with the other medical royal colleges, probably via the Academy of Medical Royal Colleges, which you'll know just recently had a change of the chair. It used to be Helen Stokes-Lampard, who is well known to most GPs. It's now Jeanette Dixon from the Royal College of Radiologists. And I think we have to work very closely with them. And I think you have to challenge government at the moment because I think the situation is so dire. And I think people will expect us to do that. I generally have always been against strike action by doctors, but I'm afraid at the moment I do actually support both the junior doctors and the consultants because I think current working conditions are just unsafe. And having been a patient myself for the last 12 months, I've seen it firsthand. And I do believe we need to be fairly challenging to current government and also speaking to other political parties as well.
Thank you, John. So next up is Chand. So similar question in terms of what do you feel should happen when the college disagrees with the government? And an example of that would obviously be strike and pay.
Yeah, so as I think it's been said before, I think the question in the event of is strange because actually successive governments have actually consistently had policies that have harmed patient care and harmed the profession. So it's not about what do. You have to speak out. You have to be open about the core values of what it means to provide care for patients. The fact we are in a nation in which we are suffering moral injury across our profession and other professions. So yes, populist policies around GP access, populist policies around winter planning that has zero funding for general practice. You have to be absolutely open and robust in your response that this is not allowing us to care for patients. Now on pay, I've been indoctrinated that the colleges don't negotiate pay, but equally, what I do think the colleges need to be clear about is that the current erosion of pay and the lack of remuneration and the impact on the workforce, leaving the profession, retiring early, the global drift of doctors here to other countries is unsustainable and will destroy the future sustainability of the NHS. And so unless the government acts to correct that, we need to be supporting the actions taken to restore pay, but also restore a workload that is actually rewarding. Yes, we need to be supporting those actions.
Thank you, Chand. And finally, Heather, same question. So what are your views if the college was to have a significant disagreement with the government? And an example of that would obviously be in terms of the current issues with pay and strike action.
Thank you. And obviously RCGP's primary remit is education, standards, quality. But I think it's really important that the college works closely with the BMA and does not undermine the BMA. And I think the college needs to be careful in its messaging. For example, I think there were some recent comments that were reported in the medical press about, comments about the appetite of GPs for strike action. And I think that's the kind of thing that, we need to be careful how we communicate so we don't risk undermining the BMA's remit. I think in terms of the strikes, clearly we've got a workforce crisis. We need to be crystal clear. We need to improve GP working conditions and pay, because if we don't, people will leave. Doctors will go abroad, doctors will go into the private sector, they'll find other options, probably not drop shipping, but people are going to leave general practice if we don't make it attractive. And so I think that we need to engage as much as possible and exert the influence and power that we do have. So yeah, I think that's the thing. Work alongside the BMA. Thank you.
Thank you. So we've got about 11 minutes, so let's see how much of this we can get through. I know Selva's got to go in a few seconds, so I'm going to give him first chance at the next question. And I'm going to amalgamate a couple of questions again. So Sabi Indigo has mentioned about where does the panel stand on patient safety, GP workload limit, and in the current circumstances. And then Ankit Kant has mentioned about to those running for council, what are your views on partnership model? Is it something that can be saved? And if so, how? So I'm going to amalgamate that into a really weird question. So what are your views on the partnership model, workload that's caused by the partnership model itself? And as a result of that, yes, no, or it's too complicated for me to answer, would you support whatever strike action would be from general practice?
45 seconds.
Yeah. Making it tricky, I understand, and I apologize, and fair enough. But just to summarize that question again, just before Selva has to go. What are your views in terms of workload in primary care, specifically from a partnership perspective, and the impact that has on the future partnership? And would you support the concept of whatever strike action would be from general practice in the future? Selva.
That's a really important question, because workload is unsustainable at the moment. I'm a partner. When I do triage, I can easily process about 200 patient queries in a few hours, plus then blood test results and everything else. So it's absolutely recognized. Workforce is one of the things that the workload is one of the things that is driving GPs from the profession. However, I think there are lots of things that we could do, and RCGP has a huge role here, working with the BMA in protecting the partnership model. Partnership model helped us deliver, or is delivering 20% more activity compared to 2019. We're the only part of the NHS to do more activity post-pandemic. It's really important to realize the partnership model is the gold standard, but we also have the flexibility within general practice workforce to be a partner, to be a surrogate GP, to be a locum. So I think it's important that we offer that flexibility to a GP who wants to do that. And as for strike action, absolutely yes. I'm on the BMA Council, and I've been very enthusiastic in my support to the consultants and the junior doctors, and I often tweet about that, and will fully support the GPC in whatever they decide.
Call time on that one for you, Selva. Sorry, apologies on that.
I got to go. So thank you so much, everyone. Great. Thanks for organising it.
Thank you, Selva. Okay, so we're going to go in reverse order this time around. So I'm going to pass over to Maureen, and I'm going to try and summarize that question again because I've already forgotten what I asked, but I think I've got it down. So what are your views on the concept of sustainable partnership, the workload and patient safety that comes with that, and would you support strike action, whatever that might look like, from a general practice primary care perspective? Maureen.
Okay, so I have a long history of work in patient safety. In one respect, you could say that patient safety, particularly safety in digital health, has been my side hustle throughout my career. So the principles and the science of patient safety have always been really important to me. And in fact, I wrote, again, when I was chair, I wrote the college's position statement on patient safety with respect to workload. I believe it's still the current position statement, and by all means have a look at it. It would be helpful to know whether you think it needs to be updated. So I'll go back to saying I don't think it's the view of the college or college officers to express specific views on industrial action. I do think we support our colleagues in the BMA and the GPC, and as Susie said, I think don't undermine them.
Thank you, Maureen. And love the tangential bringing through of the previous questions as well. So thank you for that. I'm going to pass over to Jonathan now. So again, that question again, what are your views on sustainable partnerships, the workload and patient safety issues that may present from that, and your views on strike action, whatever that might look like in the future? Would you participate?
Yeah, thanks very much. So I think the first thing, we need better data. Certainly in England, we now get appointment data, but we don't get that in the devolved nations, actually. Actually, what is missing is the hour I spent this morning doing additional admin logged into EMIS. And actually, where I reckon 3 hours of consulting generates an hour and a half of patient-associated admin. That's even before we do anything about the management of practices and the business of practices. So actually, we need that in order to be able to make the case. Certainly, the workload is unsustainable. I'm very supportive of the partnership model. I think that the benefits of partnerships have not been very well put forward and certainly not understood. I think it's about control by external bodies. In terms of industrial action, I think this is really tricky, as it is with the consultants. I think there are things that we can do in terms of being able to make the point short of, preferably strike. But if we needed to go there, well, that's where we need to go.
Thank you, Jonathan. So same question again to Heather. So what are your views on sustainable general practice partnerships, the workload and patient safety issues that may come about, and your views on strike action, whatever that might look like in the future? Thank you.
Well, I think at the moment, general practice is being propped up by huge amounts of unpaid, unmeasured work. GPs, partners and salaried, I should say, working late into the night at weekends, like Jonathan said, logging in at home on a Saturday to do work. In the short term, if the government got rid of partnership and employed everyone on the salary contract with a defined workload, GP workload would ostensibly improve. But I think long term, abolishing the partnership model would be a disaster. Partially because I think GP partnerships are, agile small businesses. One of the strengths of the partnership model is that individual GP surgeries have the ability to be flexible and respond to the needs of their patient population. And also, as I say, if you nationalise GP and employ everyone on a salary contract, where do all the patients go? Who does the work? Because, there's so much work that's not being captured or measured or remunerated at the moment. In terms of strike action, clearly it's the remit of the BMA, and I'd expect the BMA to lead on that. But if the profession votes for it, I would expect RCGP to support that and not undermine it.
Thank you, Heather. Sorry we had to cut you off there, but we're hitting time. So next up, I'm going to pass the question over to Chan. So again, just to summarize it, what are your views on sustainable GP partnerships, the workload and patient safety issues that may be involved in that, and your personal views on strike action, whatever that might look like for general practice?
So, I led some work at the BMA that showed that 9 out of 10 GPs go to work worried about making a mistake. And that's hardly a surprise when you look at the fact that in Europe, we have the shortest consultation times of often less than 10 minutes. We have probably the greatest remit and responsibility of care. We have safety issues around the transfer of work from secondary care. A lot of it is just not done by our European colleagues, and it's done in a very unsafe way. So we are living and breathing moral injury and the risk of making mistakes, and safety is at risk. I think that all needs to be addressed in terms of the college's work. Partnership, I've been a partner for 34 years. I absolutely am committed to the model, but I would also want to say there is so much hidden work that is not publicized in terms of what partners take on. Prospective patient record access is the work of partners, whereas other doctors who may be working in our practice will, of course, be part of that. But I think there's huge amounts of work that I've seen more recently when I've come back that is not recognized, needs to be recognized, great value for money. And like others have said, the college should be working with and supporting the BMA on any action. And it's very interesting that you've actually talked about action about workload and safety in addition to action about pay. So I think that's a really important point to make. Thank you.
Thank you, Chan. And final answer on this particular question, I'm going to pass over to John. So again, just summarize the question. What is your views on sustainable GP partnerships, the workload and safety implications of that, and your personal views on strike action, whatever that might look like in general practice in the future? 1 second, John, we just need to unmute you.
There, yeah. So I'm also a very strong supporter of the partnership model. I think it, 2 reasons really. One, I think it's the best way of providing continuity of care, which I think is actually essential for good general practice. Also, because I think it provides extremely good value for money, as others said. There's a huge amount of work that goes on because it's your business that you do, and if you're having to pay someone to do all that per hour, and I don't think it's appreciated what good value it is actually. But I very strongly support that, and I think it is actually entirely sustainable with appropriate funding to do so. So it just needs a political will from politicians, and I think it could happen, and we could provide extremely good general practice on that. With regards to strike action, again, I think it is largely the remit of the BMA, but if they have a ballot and that's what GPs want to do, then I'd absolutely support them. And I think the college would, but I think it has to be based on the votes of what the majority of GPs want to do. But if they did, then yes, I'd support it.
Thank you, John. Okay, so we're getting close to time. I am going to try and squidge in one more question. Apologies, that does mean I'm going to go slightly over our hour plan. Susie, I can see a hand.
I don't think Susie got a. She may.
Oh no! Apologies, you didn't. Sorry,
Susie.
That is my mistake. I apologise. We are going to go to Susie. So, yes. So, question again: sustainable GP partnerships. Your views on them, the workload and safety implications of those, and your perspective on strike action in the future, whatever that might look like in general practice.
Thanks, Gandhi. So I've been a partner twice in two very different practices because I got divorced and moved to different bits of the country. I stopped being a partner the second time because my elderly parents were ill, and I needed the flexibility of not letting patients down if I had to go 4.5 hours at short notice. And I'm currently a locum. I think the partnership model is great. It used to be that we could cap our workload, and patient safety depends on having healthy doctors who are enjoying their jobs. And making the job doable again is about the ability to restrict your patient list to the number of clinicians that you've got to do the work. But we weren't allowed to do that suddenly. It's about capping workload and the number of appointments that you can safely see, plus all of the 300 other decisions that you have to make and patient notes you have to open to make those decisions appropriately. I am a great believer in working to rule and not striking. I'm a great believer in supporting patients and putting patient care first. But obviously, as everybody said, if everybody else votes to strike, I support.
Thank you, Susie, and apologies for almost missing you there. I got confused with the order and stuff, so my apologies there. Right, as I said, I am going to try and squidge one more question, and we are slightly over our planned time of an hour. I do apologize. I hope the candidates can stick with us, if that's all right, just for a few more seconds. And to try and get some time out of this, I'm going to suggest if we can try and keep to 30 seconds as a soft finish for the questions, 45 if you're really struggling and stuff, because I'm going to try and combine 3 questions again. This is going to be fun. All right, so first question we've had is from Ankit Kant. The RCGP has clearly failed. Strong comments there, Ankit. Given the current state of general practice, what would you do to make this differently, not just platitudes? What unique thing would you do to make a difference? In addition to that, we've had a question or comment from Nuan, and apologies, I can't pronounce that in this short time. How are you solving some of the issues? One, college pays for the portfolio as part of the fees. 2, lower the fees. No political waffle spin, just do it. Bit strong there. And then lastly, we've had from Neil Leach, how do we engage trainees with the college? Is it seen as a unnecessary expense with the addition of the portfolio exam fees on top? And how do we look to give up membership at CCT? So I'm going to try and combine those into one simple question. Interesting if we can do this or not. So what are your views in terms of the membership offer that the college makes currently? As part of that, should the e-portfolios be included as part of that offer? And how do you feel that affecting training in the future? And for that first question, let's start off with Chand, shall we?
Yeah, so if I had to do one thing and I wanted it to be achievable, it would be sought out, and a college should be clear about ending inappropriate and avoidable GP workload. 27% of our appointments are estimated to be inappropriate or avoidable. I would want to be very clear about making sure that no GP appointment should be wasted on a patient coming to see us about an appointment that hasn't been given to them in secondary care, or about a backlog management issue, or about being asked to prescribe something that we shouldn't be doing, or to be actually writing letters we shouldn't be writing. That, I think we should collate all of that and ensure that stops. That, in effect, would increase our capacity for up to 27%. Huge potential there. A very clear, specific, smart objective.
Thank you, Chand. So I've slightly reformatted the question because I've kind of forgotten why I asked Chand in complete detail. So next I'm going to go to Heather. So what one thing would you change that the RCGP could do better for its members? Separate to that, should the portfolio be included as part of membership? And how can all those things service better, for particularly for trainees who seem to be leaving after completing their exams? Heather.
Thank you. That's a great question. I think in terms of my view, I think we need to ensure that RCGP is the professional home of all GPs. I've talked about how I do some work in the private sector, but we've got a lot of GPs who do work like out of hours, secure services, remote practice. And I think, I'm well placed to, to represent those views because I've had lots of roles. I've been a partner, I've done locum work, private work in secure services. In terms of the fees, I think that it's quite a complex issue, sadly, difficult to talk about because unlike hospital consultants, running exams for RCGP is quite expensive because we don't get backfill from hospital trusts for the examiners. So paying for examiner time makes up a big chunk of the cost of the exam. So I think I don't feel able to comment on that without seeing the breakdown of the finances. But I think in terms of engaging GP trainees, we need to get trainees involved in faculty boards. Offer CPD that's relevant to trainees.
I think we're going to call time on you there, Heather.
Okay,
Sorry on that one. Thank you. Next, I'm going to go to Jonathan. So let's see if I can summarize the question again. What is the one thing that you think that RCGP can do better for its members? A commentary on whether the portfolio should be included in membership fees, and include something in there about how it can do more for GP trainees who seem to be leaving after completing their exams.
Yeah, I'm with Chand. It's workforce and workload. That's the thing that really matters to all of us, and within that is actually reducing the unnecessary work. As I said, my home visit or residential home visit last night was entirely due to a cock up in secondary care, and I got home late, and I've been logging in this morning. In terms of the fees, I agree with Heather. If and I haven't seen the finances, so if the portfolio could be included in the fees, then they need to be. I'm very conscious. I said in my statement, young doctors have lots and lots of financial commitments, so I think that's really important. And I've forgotten the third bit. Sorry.
That's all right. It's a complex question. I apologize for it as well. Next, I'm going to go to Maureen. So I'm just going to try and summarize that question again. What is the one thing that you think the RCGP can do better for its members? Do you feel the portfolio should be included in the fees, and include something in there around the future for GP trainees who seem to be leaving after completing their exams?
Okay, so the one thing, if the college could solve workload workforce, then undoubtedly, that would be that's the holy grail. Moving on to the membership offer, the college president is currently the only college officer who is elected by the entire membership, and it seems to me entirely appropriate that the president focus on the membership offer for members. I think it's a very good question about the e-portfolio. I'd be very keen to see the practicalities of that. I don't see, if it became a college objective, then we should be able to do it. In terms of engaging trainees, well, we just have to help everyone see that the college is worthwhile being as a professional home. We all need a home to go to.
Thank you, Maureen. So next we're going to go to Susie. So same question again. What is the one thing the RCGP can do better for its members? Do you think the portfolio should be included as part of the membership as a separate part of that question? And finally, what can it do? Include something in there about supporting trainees who seem to be leaving as soon as they complete their exams.
I know a lot of good work has gone on it by a lot of good colleagues, but I don't think the membership offer is currently good enough. I don't think a lot of people think that the membership is worth their subscription. I think that's why they leave. And I think the answer is about communities of practice. It's creating communities of local support and networks of connections. We see so many people coming out of training and supportive training practices, going into locum work while they work out what they want to do, and being completely isolated. And the college should be there. Your pathway through your first 10 years should be 10 years to fellowship with support from the college, with communities of practice, with resources and CPD and all of the other things. But that's what will make a difference.
Thank you, Susie. And final person to answer a question. And interestingly, John was the first person to join us in the back end. So fitting that he gets to answer last, I think, in that sense. What is the one thing that the RCGP can do better for its members? Do you feel the portfolio is a separate part that should be included in membership and include something in there around trainees who seem to be leaving as soon as they've completed their exams?
Okay, so I think things I wanted to say, actually, I disagree with the initial question was that the RCGP has clearly failed. I actually don't think they have. I think they've actually done a reasonably good job in extremely difficult circumstances. So I want to make that sort of clear at the start. But the views about fees and exam fees, and I think this is an issue that's been discussed in many of the other medical royal colleges as well. And I think there does need to be a solution. I think there are possible ways of doing it. I think that central funding via Health Education England for all exam fees for people training in the NHS. And I think that could be done collaboratively with the other medical royal colleges, because it's not just GP trainees who have this problem. I think it's all trainees in there, and hospital trainees as well. But I do think it's an issue, and I do think it should be addressed. But I think it probably, again, needs to be done as a collaborative approach with the other colleges.
Thank you, John. And thank you to all of our candidates for your time and your responses on these matters. What I am hoping for many people who are watching this either live or after the event, it's given an opportunity and insight into all of our candidates and helping you make a decision of who you want to vote for the various different roles. Obviously, we do have two separate elections going on at the same time. There's the election for the new presidential candidate and for national representatives. I guess just some feedback we've had so far. So just a quick one. We had a question from Manu Knight asking about, I hope this event is recorded. It is absolutely. You can watch it on the replay, and obviously more than welcome to share that as we've commented here. We've had some good comments come from Miss Melody mentioning some good answers here today, and TS has finished us off with good quality of candidates, so at least it has seemed to have gone down well with our viewers and stuff. As always, if anybody does have any comments or questions, we're more than happy to try and answer them as best as we can. And I know we've missed a lot of questions, really sorry on that, but we've hit time, we're over time. We hope this has proved really useful and valuable to you. Feel free to contact the candidates through whichever platforms you feel comfortable to do so. I know many of them are on social media platforms and stuff. That's how I managed to get in contact with them. I would like to comment that we haven't had every candidate on this, and it is by no means affiliated with the RCGP, and obviously do have a look at the candidate statements and stuff, because that also give you more information about those who weren't able to join us quite appropriately, because let's be honest, it's a Saturday morning, people are busy and things. But absolutely thank you to all the candidates who are here live. Please go out and vote, and we hope that this has been useful to you as we continue to tech enhance your primary care and learning, and we will catch you in the next episode. Catch you later.